All right, well, thank you all for having me come out, and it's always a blessing to be with all of you and with Abuna Isaac, and this, what you guys are doing here with, I know you've been in the middle of this, the fires and this struggle, and what you're doing here with the firefighters is truly the spirit of what I'm going to talk about today with Amba Brahm. I'll just kind of get to it. So, Amba Brahm is the Bishop of Fayum and Giza, and he's also known as the friend of the poor. And so I'll kind of tell you his story. He was a bishop fairly recently. He was born in 1829 and passed away on June 10th, 1914. So he's a contemporary, and as I'll show you, we actually have a few actual pictures of him, what he actually looked like, on really bad photography. At the age of 8, his mother passed away. And I put that in red and italicized. I don't know if you guys can see the red italicized, but a bit bad. Because it belabors a very important point that I'm also going to show you in red and italicized a little further from now, which is the saints' lives are always difficult lives. Sometimes we think the saints, we read about them in the Synaxar, it says they came from good parents and they had a good upbringing and they had all this stuff, and we think their life was, but that's never the case, right? The saints' lives are always very difficult lives. A lot of struggle, a lot of persecution, a lot of trials, and you can see his childhood was no walk in the park. It started difficult. He joined the Maharat monastery at the age of 19. He became a monk. 15 years later, he became the abbot of the monastery of Maharat. If you know the Maharat, it's right in the middle of Egypt. And then very quickly, the new monks succeeded with 40 new monks very quickly. So they kind of followed him in the Maharat monastery. So he was very successful as an abbot of the monastery. And the monastery became a refuge for poor people. So he started to open the doors of the monastery for poor people who lived in that area. And this is also a very traditional monastic thing. If you read the life of Saint Pachomius, we mentioned Saint Pachomius in the commemoration. He had over 5,000 monks at one point in his monasteries, and those monasteries were open, basically hospitals and food and supplies for all of the community around them. Those monks served all the people around them. And then the monks were upset about this, right? So the monks were upset and complained that he was serving the poor out of the monastery. Now I want you to think about this for a second. He's serving the poor. This is the command of the gospel. Right, this is Matthew 25. I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me to drink. And the monks, the Christians who have devoted their life to God, turned on him. And again, I want you to go back to this idea that saints' lives aren't easy lives. Can you imagine the interior struggle? You're trying to run this monastery. You're trying to do the right thing. You're sacrificing to do it. And then the monks turn on you. And when they do, the acting patriarch relieved him of his headship at the Maharat. So he got removed from being the head of the monastery because he was serving the poor. Can you imagine? Imagine the fight inside when the attack doesn't come from an atheist or from the devil but comes from a monk. Your brothers who you've served your whole life. And then he was deposed. His name was Father Paul. He was deposed by the Metropolitan. So again, you see persecution from even within the church. And this is, the saints say this is the highest level of persecution, right? When it comes from inside, these are the people who you serve with. These are your brothers and your fathers, right? And this is a very difficult trial to deal with. And then Pope Cyril V, who, I don't know if you know him, he's called Abul Aslah. He's a very famous patriarch, the one before Pope Kyrillos VI, knew him well and appointed him as at the parish as a bishop of Fayum and Giza, and he gave him the name Amba Brahm. So this is how he got to his bishopric. He converted his bishopric into a shelter, right? for the homeless, orphans, poor, strangers. So you can imagine this entire hall was just full of homeless people all the time, right? And he just basically turned his residence into that. And one of the nice things, the stories about him, there's lots of stories, I won't get into his life too much, but one of the things he asked was he wanted his cook to make them the same food, let me say it differently, make him the same food that they ate. And he instructed them very carefully. He said, make me the same food you made for everybody else. I don't want to eat anything different. And of course, we love to give, esteem to the clergy, and we love to treat them well, and of course the cook is going to, try to zabatu, right, help him out and make him some nice, better food. He's not going to, give him the same food. So Ambabram had a suspicion. He got a really nice plate of food, and he thought, is this what everyone else is eating? So he disguised himself, went around the corner, went into the hall, and looked at the food. And some of it was bad, and some of it was rotten, some of it wasn't any good. And he fired the cook. And he said, you're not getting it. You're not getting the program. This isn't about, I want the same food necessarily. It's about how you treat other people. These are the sons of God. And you have to treat them with the dignity and respect that Christ treats all of us. Why is this important? Well, because one of the amazing things about what he did, and maybe I'll get to this in my slides later, is he did this before it was popular. He did this before, now we go to homeless shelters all the time. We go serve the food all the time, don't we? But back then, poor people were like a class below. They smelled bad. They had diseases. You didn't talk to them. You didn't touch them. They were not of your class. You didn't interact with them. And so what he did was weird, because he was giving respect to people who no one respected. He gave dignity to these people that no one dignified. And who's this like? It's Christ, right? When Christ would go hang out with the lepers, hang out with the harlots, hang out with the tax collectors, the people that nobody would talk to. He found the most neglected people, and he went after them, right? Because when you look at his life and what he did for poor people, I know people now who have done more for poor people than Ambabram did. So why does he have an icon? Because he did it when no one else did it. He did it before it was cool, right? He was one of the very first people to think of it like this. One time the Pope gave him a bunch of money and said, your building is dilapidated, it looks terrible, fix it up. And Ambabram had this tradition. He would take the money and he would put it under his pillow or in his pocket. And anyone that asked him for anything, my daughter needs to get married, I need money for the dowry, I need a new cow, he would just reach in his pocket and whatever it is, he would just hand it to him. And so the Pope gave him a ton of money. And within a few days, he distributed all the money. It was all gone. Pope comes back 2 years later, he's like, so, what'd you build? And he goes, oh, Sayyidina, I built mansions in your name. And all the poor people who took the money, they were all saying praises to you, Sayyidina. You have no idea how many kingdoms I built in your name. And of course, the Pope was not happy. And one of the interesting things about him is he refused, he was appointed as a metropolitan, he refused anyone call him Sayyidina. That was one of his characteristics, right? And of course, the word Sayyidina is a strong word. It means master. And he would never let anyone ever call him that. So you get a little insight into his humility, right, that he would refuse. And we have a few in mind. Okay, so this is actually a picture of him. And, as you can see from the story, we call him the friend of the poor, right? Sorry, I'm in the way. And the question is he a friend of the poor or is he a friend of Christ? And so I want to kind of get into the biblical principle here. This is from Matthew 25. You know this very well. When the Son of Man, and this is talking about the second coming, comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. And he will set the sheep on his right and the goats on the left. And then the king will say to those on the right, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. And the verse we all know, I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And to me, this is one of the most important, readings. Because to me, this is the list. This is the list. Sometimes people say, what do I have to do? And Christ very clearly gives you the list. I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was naked, I was in prison, and I was sick. That's the list. That's the focus, right? And this is the fruit of a life with God. On Monday night, during Holy Week, we read the story of the story of the fig tree, right? And it said the fig tree had big leaves, but no fruit. And what did Christ do? He cursed it and it died. And so the fathers interpret, say, what are these big leaves? And he said the big leaves are two things. They're the sacraments, communion, confession, and then they're ascetic practices, prayer, fasting, vigil. And so if you have leaves, you're taking in the prayer and the confession and the communion and the fasting, but you're not producing anything, we have a problem, right? So we can't stop at the level of leaves. We can't just do ascetic practices. We can't just have sacraments if they don't lead somewhere. They have to lead to something, right? One of the things they lead to is what you have on the back table here, right? And it leads to a heart of God that gives. I love this statue. When you take a good look at it, anyone notice anything? Look carefully. The feet. What's on the feet? Holes. That's just a beggar on a bench. But it's Christ. And the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. And so when we serve the poor, we aren't serving the poor. We're serving him. We're serving Christ himself. And I want to kind of focus on this concept a little bit. So this is the point I just made. Why is he so revered? There are people today that do more than he did, but he did it when no one else did it. He did it when poor people were thought of as second-class citizens. He showed a kind of rebellion. And sometimes, you see this rebellion in people, and it's kind of nice to see, because Christ had rebellion in him. He rebelled against the powers of the Pharisees and the power of the structure and the power of the world. God gives us this spirit of rebellion. It's a good spirit. And we're supposed to use that spirit of rebellion against whom? The world. Right? The world tells us, act like this, do this, try to acquire these assets, try to make a bunch. The world tries to teach us about what we're supposed to do. And we need this spirit of rebellion to rebel against the world. Of course, when you're a teenager, Satan tells you, no, don't rebel against the world, rebel against whom? Your parents, right? The people who love you more than anyone else on earth, right? And that's who you want to really rebel against, right? That's the bad guy. And so he had this kind of this beautiful rebellion, right? So what you see is this greater submitting to the lesser. The greater submitting to the lesser. The bishop submitting to these poor people. And who did that? This is Christ. And so I want you to think about what it means to serve others. Sometimes it's hard to find poor people in Southern California. I can especially say in Orange County, hard to find poor people. I mean, unless you make less than $100,000 and you're considered poor, right, in Orange County. But sometimes youth will say, there's no one poor around here. I mean, I know you guys have a lot more homeless than you do up here in LA. But the mystery of the hiddenness of Christ is in the poor and the weak. And those people are much easier to find. In the litany of the sick, Abuna says, those who are in distress, those who are in dungeons, those who are in prisons. Do you know anyone in a dungeon? You met anyone in a dungeon? Yeah, I have. There are people trapped in dungeons. Dungeons of addiction, dungeons in their own mind, dungeons of depression, prisons of all kinds of actions. These people are everywhere. They're not hard to find. In fact, they're all in this room. You don't have to look far. Just look to the person next to you. So when we start thinking, who do I need to serve? They're everywhere. Everyone needs to be served. And no matter what household you go to, no matter how good it looks on the outside, Abuna can tell you, once you go inside the house, there's all kinds of fires burning inside the house. There's all kinds of problems in every household, in every person. This is the nature of humanity. And so sometimes we can give, it's not necessarily with money. Give time. Give a service. Cook for somebody. Give love. Give a kind word. And it doesn't have to be someone who's poor financially. There are people who are poor with low self-esteem, low morality, low self-worth. There are poor people in all kinds of poverty. Find them. They're everywhere. It's not hard to find these people. And this is exactly what St. Paul tells us to do. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. It's impossible to live a life with God and to not care about your neighbor. Do you see what I'm saying? It's impossible to be apathetic. Right? Because once I say, God is my Father, then all of you become my brothers. Right? If I get adopted into a family, and these two parents adopt me, and they say, okay, welcome to the family. And baptism is what? The spirit of adoption. And so now I'm adopted into the family and say, well, here's your brothers. And you say, no, I don't want these as my brothers. I just want you as my parents. Well, no, that's not the package. The package is, we adopted you, and here are our 3 kids, and now we're 4 kids now. So I can't have him be my dad, and you not all be my brothers. And this is why Christ, whenever he synthesizes the entirety of the gospel, he says what? Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. They go hand in hand. Love God, love neighbor. Love God, love neighbor. And sometimes we get really good at loving God and not really good at loving neighbor. So I'll read you some quotes. This is by Mother Teresa. She says, the most terrible poverty is loneliness and the feeling of being unloved. So again, I want you to get out of the mindset of poverty is money. Poverty isn't about money. There could be a poverty of spirit, and loneliness is everywhere. In fact, when you look at the youth now, that's the issue. There's loneliness, there's anxiety, there's depression. That's what's ailing our kids. That's what's ailing our communities. We don't have community anymore. Find these people. Elder Paisius says, those who come close to people in pain naturally draw near to God, because God is always by the side of his children who are in pain. And I like this quote because he says, those who come close to people in pain. This is our role, everybody. Find the people in the hospitals, find the people who are sick, find the people who are disabled in some way. Find the broken. And the broken are everywhere. I was speaking with someone at our church, and he was like, I want to serve, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I can't, and this guy won't let me, and I mean khidmah. And I said, you know what you should do? Go to ask Abuna, ask for a list of people in the hospital, and go visit. These people sit there for a month without a human being who visits them. They wait for their kid to show up every 3rd day. Go visit, go sit, go listen to their stories. Go to the convalescent home and just tell me about your kids. This is the service. It's such a beautiful service. And there are so many ways we can serve our neighbor. These are starfish. So there's a story of a boy and his son walking on the beach. And they came across this scene. So what happens is the starfish, they're in the water, and if the tide comes back too quickly, the starfish get stuck out on the sand. Obviously, they don't have very good arms or legs, so they dry up in the sun. And so the boy walked up, he said, oh my God, Dad, look at this. All these starfish are drying out here. They're going to die out here. And there's 1,000 of them. What are we going to do? And so the dad picks up a starfish and he throws it back in the water. And then he picks up another one and he throws it back in the water. And the son's like, what are you doing, Dad? He's like, I'm throwing the starfish back. He goes, there's thousands of starfish here. You're not even making a dent in any of this. You're not changing anything. So he picked up another one and he threw it. He said, well, I just changed that one. And he picked up another one and he goes, I just saved that one. And so quickly the little boy picked up a starfish and threw it back in the water. And it isn't about saving everybody. It's about saving the one. And sometimes we like to think about the bigger calling, if you will, or the bigger achievement. I'd love to save a village in Africa. You know what? How about the neighbor standing next to you? How about the person that's right in front of you? And this is what St. Mother Teresa says. She says, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. And you made a difference in one. And in fact, when you look at the life of Christ, that's how he did it. One-on-one, individual. He met with people, he looked them in the eye, he listened to their stories, he sat with them. And I hope all of you get the opportunity one day to sit with a saint. Some of these saintly people that exist in our world. Because when you sit with a saint, you'll find something very unique about the saint, which is that saints focus on you. When you're talking to them, they look at you like there's no one else. They really listen to you. Some people, you're talking to someone, they're like looking past you, looking at the door, who came in, who went out. Saints don't do that. You're the only person on earth. And that kind of attention is how we change people, how we show them love. So don't think about serving everybody and making a big thing. No, just one person. Pick up a starfish and change its life. If each of us picked one person and changed their life, what would the world look like? It would be a different world, completely. So the question is, why does Christ want us to love the poor? Why? Emma Brum had this tradition. He just handed money out to everyone he saw. In fact, there's a story about a few people who tried to deceive Emma Brum and asked for money when they didn't really need it. And people would tell him, what are you gonna, there are people are lying to you. Because, they knew he would just hand out money. And they said, this guy's lying. He doesn't need it. And Emma Brum always had the same answer. It's like, that's not for me to judge. That's between them and God. If they want to lie to me and use the money, that's them. My job is to give if asked. And that's what I do. And so the question is, who else does this? Who else shares everything they have, regardless of the worth or the ability of the person to pay them back? Who just gives? Who? Who gives to someone who is beneath them, who doesn't deserve it, who isn't worthy? Who? Who loves and cherishes someone or something that cannot give back? We say this in the Gregorian liturgy, right? I know we're all sleeping during the Gregorian liturgy, we're thinking of Feta. But during the Gregorian liturgy, when it says something beautiful, he says, you are not in need of our service, you're not in need of our service, but I am in need of your lordship. You don't need me, I need you. You don't need me to serve you, I need to serve. And so God is constantly giving us what we don't deserve. And we can't pay God back. God just gives. It's one direction. Nothing you can do is for God. He doesn't need you. Even you think of the story of Jonah, right? So Jonah, there's the Nineveh, the Ninevites are sinful. Jonah, go preach to the Ninevites. I don't want to. Why would God send Jonah? Think about it. You're God. You can do anything you want. And you want this group of people to repent. How could you make them repent? Lots of ways, right? You could have fire come out of the sky. You could have sound, thunder. You can say, I am God. If you don't repent, I'll burn. A million ways, right? But he doesn't do all those ways. He picks Jonah. Why? Because in the end of the story, we realize the whole thing wasn't about the Ninevites. It was about Jonah. He didn't need Jonah. Jonah needed him. So God is constantly giving, regardless of my ability to pay back. And that's the beauty of a poor person. Right? Because, when I help out Abuna, it's Abuna. Right? I help out, this wealthy doctor down the street. And I say, I'll pick up your kids for you. Well, that's because he's the wealthy doctor and he's famous and I can get a little bit of credit and somebody will know that I did something. But when I go help someone on the street, no one knows. And what can that person do for me? Nothing. He can do nothing for me, right? And that's the beauty of poor people. They can do nothing for you. When a kid at my church, asks me for a letter of recommendation, I write him a letter of recommendation because maybe my son will ask his dad for a letter of recommendation, and I want him to know that I helped out your son so that maybe you can help out my son when my son needs a job, right? I'm going to get something out of this, aren't I? But I go help a homeless guy. I'm not getting anything from this guy. And that's the relationship between us and God. When God gives us, there's nothing we can give him. God doesn't need us. And so when we help the poor, we become the image of God. That's how we become in his image and likeness. Isn't this our goal? Don't we say we want to be the image and likeness of God? So how do you become the image and likeness of God? Well, you help people who can give you nothing back, just like God does to me. And we say that God's righteousness, God is, in the gospel it says that the rain falls on the righteous and the unrighteous. And the sun shines and the good and the unjust. The goodness just is applied evenly. And that's what we do when we give, serve, love these people who are, quote unquote, beneath us. I love this. It's hard to throw stones when you're busy washing feet. Love like Jesus. That was cute. So there's a person called Father Greg Boyle. I don't know if you guys know him. He serves out here in LA. It's a place called Homeboy Industries. He's really amazing. He's a Jesuit priest. And he has these quotes. He basically rehabilitates gang members. When they come out of prison, he gets their tattoos removed. He gives them a job. He gives them training. He gives them parenting skills, anger skills, drug addiction therapy, all for free. He's rehabilitated thousands of gang members. And when you go to this Homeboy Industries headquarters in Los Angeles, I highly recommend you go to. It's a life-changing experience when you get a tour from a guy who said, I was in jail for 35 years. And let me tell you what I did. And the guy is the sweetest, nicest person you've ever met. But I'll tell you what, if I met him in a dark alley, I'd be scared. And he says something here very important. He says, the measure of our compassion lies not in the service to those in the margins. The people in the margins are the people we're talking about. Poor people, the gang members, the lepers, the harlots, the tax collectors, whoever's in the margin, the people who are marginalized by society. He says the measure of our compassion lies not in the service to those in the margins, but only in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. The word kinship means brotherhood. So he's saying it's not about serving them. It's about being one with them, being a brother to them. One of the things, if you want to join his organization, he has a huge organization. And if you want to, he'll interview you. And he'll say, why do you want to join this organization? And if you say, because I want to help gang members, I want to help them get rehabilitated, he'll say, yeah, sorry, we don't have a job for you. You're not going to get the job. So what's the right answer? The right answer isn't, I want to help them. Why? Because I want to help them. And there's no us and them. But if you come in and you say, I want to learn from them, I want to be in kinship with them, then that's the right answer. That's a brother. And this is the way Christ interacted. He didn't make people feel like he was better than them. Right? In fact, even the disciples didn't know who he was. They kept asking, what are you? Who are you? Are you the Messiah? So he was in camouflage, even as Christ. And so this is about how we serve the poor. Because if it's me up here, and I'm going to throw you a couple of bucks, here's a sandwich, because you're beneath me. That's not giving dignity to another human being, is it? That's not what they need. Right? In fact, often when we go to these homeless shelters or whatever, I don't spend any time giving them food, because anyone can give them a sandwich. I spend time listening. I say, tell me about your kids. Tell me about your life. And I'm going to listen and give you the dignity of a human being and treat you with respect. And this is a very important characteristic. Right? We even see this sometimes, sometimes you'll be out at a restaurant and someone will treat the waitress very badly. And you're like, that's a person. That's the Son of God. How could you talk to someone like that? How do you treat the maid? How do you treat the gardener? How do you treat the people beneath you? This is the true sign of what Christ is like. This is what Embra Braun did when he said, don't treat the people with different food than me. I eat what they eat. Give them the same dignity you give me. And this is what Christ does with us. Gives us dignity as people. Even in the story of the Samaritan woman, right? What did he say to her? I like you. You don't lie. You've said the truth. Truthfully, you don't have a husband. He complimented her. He picked the one thing she has, and he complimented. All right, so I want to read you this story by St. Macarius. I know it's a long story, and I know you're all asleep. You want to stand up for Fischer Schweige, wake up and jump around, whatever you want. Get the wiggles out. Okay. So this is the story of St. Macarius, and I'm sure you've all heard this. This is in the Bustan, the Paradise of the Fathers. This is just a fun story, okay? So just listen to it with me. When the disciple of Abba Macarius had gone ahead, so he's walking with his disciples, he met a priest of the pagans, pagan priest. The brother shouted after him saying, "O devil, where are you off to?" Right? So the disciple sees the pagan priest and he calls him a devil. Okay? The priest turned back and beat him and left him half dead. Okay? So the guy says, Yalla shtan, right? He calls him a devil, so the guy turns around and beats him up and almost kills him. Then picking up his stick, he runs away. So the disciple got away. When he'd gone a little further, Abba Macarius met him, running and said to him, "Greetings, greetings, you weary man." Okay, so Abba Macarius met the same pagan priest, and he says, "Greetings, you weary man." Quite astonished, the other came up to him and said, "What good do you see in me that you greet me this way?" So this is the pagan priest saying. And the old man, St. Macarius, said to him, "I have seen you wearing yourself out without knowing that you are wearing yourself out in vain." The pagan priest said to him, "I have been touched by your greeting, and I realize that you are on God's side. But another wicked monk, his disciple, who met me, insulted me, and I gave him blows enough for him to die of them." He's telling you, I beat the heck out of your disciple. And then the pagan priest fell at St. Macarius' feet and said, "I will not let you go till you have made me a monk." Through him, many pagans became Christians. So Abba Macarius said, and I love this quote, he says, "One evil word makes the good evil, while a good word makes the evil good." Okay, so it's a kind of a strange story. Let's kind of digest it here for a second. What did St. Macarius actually say that made this pagan priest leave paganism, become a Christian, become a monk, and become a disciple of St. Macarius? Like, that's quite a conversion, isn't it? He went from pagan priest to leave paganism, become a Christian, become a monk, and become his disciple. What did he say? Let's go back and look at the text. "Greetings, greetings, you weary man." Anyone feel that that's life-changing? Would anyone's life change if you said, "Greetings, greetings, weary man"? Quite astonished, the other came up to him and said, "Why, what good do you see in me?" The old man said, "I have seen that you are wearing yourself out without knowing that you are wearing yourself out in vain." Is that life-changing to anyone? Would you give up paganism because someone said you're wearing yourself out in vain? I wouldn't. The other said to him, "I've been touched by your greeting." Does this make any sense? That's it. That's all he said. That's it. That's from the Bustan. That's from the paradise of the fathers. So what are we missing? Here's another strange story. As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the booth, tax collector, and he said to him, "Follow me." And what did Matthew do? He arose and followed him. Weird. You know, tax collector, best job on earth, right? Make lots of money, lots of power, lots of prestige. And some guy, a homeless guy, says, "Follow me." You leave the best job, and you say, okay. You don't ask about medical benefits. You don't say, "Is there a retirement plan? Where am I going to sleep tonight? What are we eating tomorrow?" You just do it. Weird? Weird. What are we missing? What are we missing? The story of Christ and the story of St. Macarius. We're missing a piece. It's the look. The look. What was the look in Christ's eyes when he looked at Matthew? He looked at him like no man had ever looked at him before. Because you know, Matthew's tax collector, right? People, as they crossed the street, they'd spit on him. If they walked, and then they would cross the street and go away from him. They would curse him. And here's a guy who looked at me like I've never been looked at before. Who loved me like I've never been loved before. Same with St. Macarius. It must not have been the words. It must have been the eyes. The look. That look of love. And you all know the look, don't you? There are people at church, when you walk up to them, they give you a look, and you just know, this person loves me. And you can see it in their eyes. They don't have to say a word. Maybe they don't even speak English. It doesn't matter. It's all in the look. And so that look becomes a service. Forget giving, it doesn't have to be money to the poor, or how about just look someone in the eye and smile on a Sunday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, at work, at school, on the street. Treat the people with respect, give them that dignity, the same way Christ did to everybody. This is what changes hearts. You want to talk about converting, showing, preaching the message? What did Jesus say? "By this they will know you are my disciples." Right? And this is historically the only thing that's ever changed anybody. It's not well-crafted arguments. It's not a bunch of apologetics and let me logic you into thinking that there has to be a God because of blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really work. It might be right. No one's ever convinced. They just argue. Right? You get these big heated fights about it. But the acts of love, they go right to the heart. And that's how a pagan priest, you could sit there and give him a theological dissertation about why paganism can't be true. He probably would have just hit you. And that would have been the end of it, right? But instead, the look was all he needed. Father Greg Boyle says, we shouldn't just want to serve the less fortunate, but also be anchored in some profound oneness with them and become them. Jesus was not a man for others, he was a man with others. There's a world of difference in that. Jesus didn't seek the rights of lepers. He touched the lepers even before he got around to curing them. He didn't champion the cause of the outcast. He was the outcast. He didn't fight for improved conditions for the prisoner. He simply said, I was in prison. He became those things. He became oneness. And not just with those people. He became oneness with humanity. All of us. And this is the miracle of the incarnation. Right? In fact, this is why Islam, they can't accept Christ. Because it can't believe that Allah, God, would humiliate himself and go down to this level. They just can't believe it. And they kind of have a point. It's just unbelievable. But if I call myself a Christian, then that's what I have to do too. I have to be up here and I have to say, I will go down and meet you where you're at. Whatever that means. This is us meeting Father Greg Boyle. There's a USB. He came and gave a talk. There's Gregory right there. That's my other son, Justin. So now we can say we've met him. I've met him a few times, actually. He's quite amazing. Anyone heard of Gottman? He's a therapist, like a super therapist. He says, human nature dictates that it is virtually impossible to accept advice from someone unless you feel that person understands you. This is just good advice for all of you in all your relationships. Until the person thinks they get you, they won't accept advice from you. That's why you can go up to a teenage boy who's doing something dumb. And you can say, that's dumb. Don't do that. And he'll look at you and go, who are you? You don't even know me. I don't have to know you to know that's dumb. But it is. But the kid won't accept it. Right? Because you don't know me. But if you know me and you talk to me, then I'll accept that advice. One time a girl, she's graduated college now, but she told me once something huge. She said, all these years, so many Sunday school teachers called me. And they said, we missed you at Sunday school. Where were you? When are you going to come back to church? We want to see you. And she said, not one of them ever asked me, how are you doing? How are you? No one asked about me. They just want to know why I wasn't there, so they can check the box. Can you come back? Be sure to come back. We need you there. What about me? Do you understand me? Do you know me? Do you know what's going on in my life? Are you even curious what's going on in my life? So before we try to help somebody and give them some money or give them some, understand them. Listen. And we talk way too fast. We talk. We give advice. Someone says one little thing. Oh, yeah, okay. Let me tell you why God's doing this. Yes, and you're going to tell me what God's thinking from one sentence? You already diagnosed the whole problem? Listen. Understand me. Have compassion. Sit in it with me. This is the way Christ did it. These are just great quotes, but I'll skip on this. There's too many. Okay. What was Christ's commandment to man? Love God and neighbor as yourself. And how did he tell people that, the disciples, that people would know that we were his disciples? They will know you by your love. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. So in the end, it's all about loving one another, and only then do we see each other as a body that is connected, right? Because we say we become the body of Christ in the Eucharist, and we become in him, and he is love. And this is how we connect. And again, why does God ask us to do this? Because then we start to learn how much God loves us. This is how we become the image and likeness of God, when we love those who are weaker than us. Okay, so I don't know how much I have left, but I know you're all getting sleepy. Sure you don't want to wake up, get a jump around, do something? Is there any questions so far? We can get a break out for questions. Sleepy.
You can read the previous page, please.
Yes, Salam. You want the quote? The quote I
When you skip.
Habibi.
Sorry.
No problem. The way he writes is beautiful. He says, imagine a circle of compassion and imagine no one standing outside the circle. And he says, stand at the margins, because that's the only way they will ever get erased, is if we stand out at them. The margins are the edges. Whenever a group of teenagers are together or friends, there's the group, they're talking and they're the funny ones and then there's the people standing on the outside listening to the people on the inside. So he says, move to the outside, and then no one's outside anymore. Stand with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless. Stand with those whose burdens are more than they can bear. Stand with the easily despised and the readily left out. Stand with the demonized, the demonizing will stop, and with the disposable, so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. And brace yourselves, because the world will always accuse you of wasting your time at the margins. This is Christianity. Stand with the easily despised and the left out and the demonized and the disposable, with the powerless and the voiceless. Okay, so is it that when we serve the poor that we serve Christ? Or that when we serve the poor we become like Christ? Which is it? Is it when we serve the poor that we serve Christ? He said, whenever you did the least of this, you did to me. Yes. Or as we just talked about, that when we serve the poor we become like Christ, and the answer is yes. Both of them. It's two ways. It's not just I'm serving him, but I'm becoming him in serving him. It's a circle. And this is a picture of Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa. And what does she look like? She looks like him, helping those who can't help themselves. All right, I can stop now. You may have any more questions and comments, thoughts, criticisms. You guys want to just eat more egg rolls? They are very delicious, I can say. I guess they're spring rolls. I don't know.
Mark,
Yeah.
one of the things that's we know by science that it wasn't what Emma Macarius said that changed it. They've actually done studies on this, and there's a rule. It's called 73855.
Oh wow.
They say 7% of your message is conveyed in your words. 38% of your message is conveyed in your tone. And 55% of your message is conveyed in your body language.
Wow.
So even if you have a beautiful tone and your words are perfect, more than half the message can be given by just the way you stand and address someone. So that's
And I have to say that the body language part, even the tone part to a certain degree, is the part you can't see. You know, like growing up, let's be honest, right? Growing up, there's always those people at church, right? Sometimes they acted really nice, but you knew they didn't really like you. They're just kind of fake. And hi Habibi, and you're like, yeah, you don't really, you're just judging me up and down, right? You just see it from the look, like, oh, you're a good boy. No, you don't think that. No one thought that about me. And so it's easy to spot in each other, right? And like I said before, language isn't the barrier, when you go to Teta's house, even if you don't speak Arabic, it doesn't matter. Teta's love just comes through in whatever, right? In the way she greets you, in the way she hugs you, in the way she looks at you, right? This stuff doesn't need language, And even a step further, when you know someone loves you, they can really say anything they want to, right? You walk in, Teta goes, hey man, like you look fat, and she can insult you, and you'll just laugh, and you'll say, I love you too, Teta. It doesn't matter what Teta says, right? Because you know it's coming from this deep well of love. And so, yeah, thank you for that, John. Yes, sir.
Are there more slides?
There are. You want to go through them? Other people want a name. Have the name? And the name. Maybe I'm just projecting. I'm the one who has the hour drive home, so I'm like, you guys want to sleep, right? Okay, we'll continue.
Words are waking me up.
Okay. So it's very important to remember that virtue is, again, it's about the love that comes from the virtue. The love that's behind the virtue, not the virtue itself. It's not the action. And if I take a sandwich and I throw it at some homeless guy, go, here, eat. Obviously, it's not accepted by God, and it's not accepted by him. Right? And although I did the same thing as the guy next to me who handed the sandwich out, give him a hug, they both got a sandwich. Right? Both of them, we're given something, but it's the love that comes behind the action that makes the difference. Christianity lifts up our compassion and we sense the needs and feelings of others. This is the highest, this is what Christianity does. It makes you very hasses. It makes you very sensitive to other people's feelings and emotions. And this is what St. Paul says, though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. So, we'll kind of go through this, I guess. Cause or effect. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. I gave you this verse earlier. What does this mean? What is St. Paul saying? Is he telling you you're supposed to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep? Is he saying, you have to do this, this is a commandment. If you do this, then you're good. Is that what he's saying? Let's think about it. Another cause or effect. Count you blessed of my Father, this is what we read earlier. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. The for is very important, because he didn't say because. See the difference? What if he said, you inherit the kingdom of heaven because you fed the poor and you gave the drink and you visited the sick? Then what? So you did it, you're going to inherit the heaven because you gave to the poor, right? So that means what? I earned it, right? I did something good. And God, as a reward, said, oh, you did something good? Then I'm going to send you to heaven. So who saved me? I saved me. I did it, right? I earned it, right? And when you get in this mindset, if I do a good deed, then God will give me heaven, then I'm just buying heaven, right? Who do I love? I love me. I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to heaven. I'll give a guy a sandwich. Right? So we have to be careful that we don't think I'm earning this heaven. Heaven, St. Paul says this is a free gift of grace. So serving others is an outcome of a life with God. The life of God is what we're focused on, not the actions. Because some people, like someone like St. Anthony, he didn't really serve the poor. So when I live my life with God, everyone gets a different gift. Some people are men of prayer, some people are men of service, some people are men of solitude. Everyone is different, but the goal isn't just imitate Amba Braun. The goal is to imitate what Amba Braun did, which is he lived a life with God. That's the primary thing that we're most interested in. Does that make sense? So because I live with God, then I naturally give to the poor, and I naturally stand in vigil, and I naturally give my body to be burned because of this love for my neighbor, which comes from a love of God. Does that make sense? That's a long quote. عايزين تناموا ولا short? Okay. This is the hard part of loving our neighbor. Okay, so let's just start. I'll just stop before you start reading. A lot of people suck. Not everybody that you love loves you back. And in fact, in Christianity, we're never promised that people will love us. We're supposed to love one direction. There's no promises that you get love back. In fact, if you look at the life of Christ, you see that's exactly what happened. Love one direction. What did he get back? Crucifixion. Look at the lives of the saints. Love. What did they get back? Martyrdom, persecution, difficulty. So the promise of Christianity isn't people are going to love me. The promise is you love. And just like Christ gave one directionally, we give one directionally. The reason people get burned out at church, get burned out at the service, Khalas, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to serve anymore. Why? Well, because I'm expecting something back. And then I don't get my due respect. I don't get my dignity. I don't get my the attribution you should give to me after all these years, after everything I did. The least you could do is take my opinion. You see what's going on? It's not one directional. I want something back from the service. But Christ's love is always one directional. So when I'm serving people, there are many people who aren't going to treat me well back. You know the story of the 10 lepers? You guys remember this story? So there's 10 lepers that came to Jesus. Jesus healed 10. They left. And one came back to thank him. And then he said, where's the rest of them? And then he said, go do give the ritual to the priests. But what's the important part of this story? Is that Jesus healed 10 people. He's Jesus. He knows what? That 90% of them are not going to thank him. But he did it anyway. That's the important part of the story. That God, Christ being God, knows most people that I help don't thank me. I do it anyway. Because I do it unconditionally. It's not about the thank you. And that's about right. Most of the people you help don't say thank you at the end. About 90% don't say thank you. That's okay. We do it anyway. In fact, when people don't say thank you, it purifies the service. In fact, when تاخد على دماغك, it purifies the service even a bit more. Right? Because then there's no pride, there's no feedback, there's no, great job and great service and great talk and great مش عارف ايه. Right? There's none of this stuff. It's just one direction. So this quote from St. John of Kronstadt is a wonderful Russian saying. He says, we must love our neighbor even when he sins against God or against us ourselves. Because then he is sick. Because then he is in spiritual misfortune and danger. And then, especially, we must have compassion upon him, pray for him, and apply to his heart a protective bandage. A word of kindness, instruction, reproval, consolation, forgiveness, love. Forgiving one another just as God in Christ forgave you. All sins and passions, quarrels and disputes are truly spiritual diseases. That is how we must look upon them. All passions are a fire of the soul, a great raging internal fire, a fire coming from the abyss of hell. It must be extinguished by the water of love, which is strong enough to extinguish every diabolical flame of malice and other passions. I'll stop there for a second. I want you to imagine a scene with me. I'm walking with my friend, okay? We're walking at night out here in Santa Monica, and some guy jumps out and beats up my friend. Just beats the heck out of him. Takes his wallet, takes his phone, just beats him bloody. And I look at my friend, his nose is broken, his blood coming out of his eyes, his arm is going the wrong way. He's a mess, his ribs are cracked, his face is all ugly, and bloody. And then I look at him and I go, you're disgusting. Look at you. Look at, you got blood coming out of your nose and your face and your arms. You can't even walk. Look at you. You disgust me. Could you do that? Would you do that? Why not? He is disgusting. He does look disgusting. Everything you said is true. But you know that what? The guy did it to him, right? The guy who jumped out of the thing, he beat him. So sometimes we see our brother and they're disgusting. And they're full of passion and misfortune and ugliness and sickness. And instead of seeing what happened, which is Satan came and destroyed my brother, I say to him, you're ugly. You disgust me. So I encourage all of us to try to see in our brother that Satan is the one who destroys. In the Bustan, the Paradise of the Fathers, there's a quote from the Fathers that I love. It says, if you see your brother sin a great sin, say to him, I curse you, Satan, my brother is not at fault. Yeah.
Who said that one?
It's this Desert Father, doesn't say the name. If you see your brother sin a great sin, say, I curse you, Satan, my brother is not at fault. My brother is a victim of you. of Satan. And this is how we can see our brothers in love. This is how Christ saw people. So sometimes we're going to serve people and they're not going to say thank you. And they're going to hurt us back. They'll talk about us. And sometimes we'll see in them sickness and disease and ugliness. But as he says here, this is where you put on a protective bandage, a word of kindness, instruction, consolation, forgiveness, love. And you consume this fire with the water of love. And this is how we need to handle each other. Okay, this is a nice quote. It says, people are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest, people may cheat you. Be honest anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough, but give your best anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and your God. It was never between you and them anyway. So, when we serve others, we're not serving others. We serve God. That's the only person we serve. Right? So sometimes someone will say, I do it for the kids. I love the kids. No, you're not serving the kids. You're not serving the parents. You're not serving a Chidma. You're not serving a Buna. You're not serving the bishop. We only serve God. That's who we serve. That's who we serve. That's who we focus on. And sometimes even in our marriage is a service to God. It's not to the other person. Because the other person, frankly, doesn't deserve it. Especially him or her. So if you're waiting for the other person to deserve it, there's going to be a time they don't deserve it. Right? There's a time you don't like them. Right? That's okay. Because I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for my covenant with Christ. Okay. Last quote. He says, St. John Chrysostom, if you cannot find Christ in the beggar at the church door, you will not find him in the chalice. Do you want to honor Christ's body? Do not ignore him when he is naked. Do not pay him homage in the temple clothed in silk only to neglect him outside where he is cold and ill-clad. He who said, this is my body, is the same who said, you saw me hungry and you gave me no food. And whatever you did to the least of my brethren, you did also to me. What good is it if the Eucharist table is overloaded with golden chalices when your brother is dying of hunger? Start by satisfying his hunger, and then with what is left, you may adorn the altar as well. Harsh words. If you cannot find Christ in the beggar at the door of the church, you will not find him in the chalice. Anyone see anything interesting on this picture? The hand. Actually, this exact statue is at Christ the Good Shepherd too. It's a replica from another church. It's a beggar, and his hand is out, and it's Christ. How can we worship a homeless man on Sunday and ignore one on Monday? So this is a story by William Schweighömer, and again, this goes back to who do we serve? And sometimes we say things like, well, we'll serve our community, the cops first, our people. And one of the beautiful things about William Schweighömer is he didn't think like this. His service was to everybody. In fact, at his funeral, they'll tell you there were as many Muslims at his funeral as there were Christians. And then you start asking these Muslims, why are you here? He's like, oh, let me tell you what he did with us. He did this, and he saved my wife, and he saved my kid, and he saved this, and all these stories start coming out of all the things he did behind the scenes to Muslims. Anyway, this is just a long story, and you guys want to sleep, I'm sure. Okay. I have 40 slides. Okay, I put too many slides. This is my fault. I do too many slides. I usually just end at some point when you all want to sleep, but you guys aren't sleepy yet.
We want the story.
Yeah, well. Okay. It happened, there was a small grocery store next to St. George Church in Sporting. You know, in Alexandria Sporting, there was a St. George Church that Abuna Shoikem started, and Abuna Tedros and Abuna Loa both came out of that same church. The owner of the store was a Muslim extremist who saw anything relating to Christianity as a threat and would vehemently insult Abuna Shoikem and intensely spit on him as he would pass the store. So imagine this guy owned the store. Every time Abuna Shoikem went by, and he went by a lot because it's right next to the church, he spit on him and insulted him. Abuna Shoy was patient with the man, and at times he would thank him as he made his way past the shop. Shukran, One day, Father Bishoy Kemal was on his way to church, and he noticed the man was not outside to give him the usual shitima, the usual cursing. Abuna Shoy made his way into the shop, noticing a young boy and what appears like his mother, the family of the store owner. Greeting the wife, he asked where her husband was. The wife started to see her husband talked so abruptly about, inquired how he related to Abuna Shoy. He explained, I was a friend of your husband. So she said, who are you? He said, I was his friend. Confused, she told her that her husband was in bed because he had a heart attack. Upon hearing this, Abuna Shoy said, can you give me some time? I have to finish some errands. And then have your son take me back to the house so I can see your dad. Check on him. By the time Abuna Shoy Kemal came back, he came back with 2 bags of fresh fruit. So when he said, I have some errands to do, he went and he bought a bunch of fresh fruit and asked the lady at once to take him to the man to check on him. This is the man who cursed him and spit on him. The lady sent her son to take Abuna Shoy in the house. The boy went in and said, Abuna, the priest is at the door. His dad's confused. Why is there a priest? Would show up, was embarrassed, told his son, bring the priest in. Abuna Shoy walked in, checked on the man's well-being, and when he knew that he had suffered a heart attack, he asked for the phone and dialed his son in the service, the doctors, and told him to take care of the man. So he called his Sunday school kids and he said, come take care of this guy. The man was too stunned to speak. Bewildered and not believing that the same priest he kept spitting on and insult him can show him so much love. Abuna Shoy kept visiting the man who was so moved by Abuna Shoy's love he converted to Christianity. This is it.
And you wanted to skip that story?
And this is the whole message, right? This is the way you do it. You don't argue. You don't say you have a false god and have the pagan priest beat you up. It's the look. And again, when Abuna Shoy came and walked in with the groceries, it wasn't like here, chud. The look in his eyes was one of love. Okay. So this is from Elements. Yeah, this is a great book called Elements that the youth are all reading. I like this story. This is one of the youth approached Elijah. He's a character in the book and says, I love the poor. Elijah responds, you don't love the poor. It's impossible to love the poor. One can never love a general category of people. It's like saying, I love black people, or I love Asians, or you can't love all Asians. Or I love children, I love the poor, I love the sick. No, we cannot love generally. One day, I tell you, young people will express their ideals without ever lifting a finger. No, my dear. We love in the particular. We love James and Jason. We love one person at a time. And again, this goes back to, I like to serve the poor, I like to help the poor. No, you like to help a person, a human being. Don't dehumanize them and say, they're poor people. No, they're a person who's a father or a son or a mother or a daughter. Okay, my ending thought, I love this quote. The liturgy starts when we leave church. The liturgy starts when we leave church. The liturgy starts when we leave church. Abuna Shoy Kemal says, people don't need to hear about Christ anymore. They have heard enough. They rather need to see Christ in us. There's enough talk. There's enough sermons. Just go to SoundCloud. Hundreds and thousands of hours of sermons on Facebook and YouTube. And William Shoyam said this in the 1960s when there was cassette tapes. And he thought there's too many sermons then. He has no idea. He says they don't need to hear about Christ anymore. They need to see. The liturgy starts when we leave the church. And the whole idea of the church, the Eucharist, is we come, we take Christ, and then we go be Christ in the world. We go be the light of the world. St. John Chrysostom says, there would be no need for sermons if our lives were shining. There would be no need for words if we bore witness with our deeds. There would be no more pagans if we were true Christians. So this is how we change.
Doesn't the word liturgy mean liturgy?
Yes. So you remember something? Okay. Anybody have any questions for us on? Nothing? Okay. Anything to add?
No, not I have to ask actually.
Oh.
Here in America, there is generally, the West generally, a sense of humanism, a sense of caring for others. It's not really strange to see that in any community, you know. In Egypt I lived, you can see like what Abu Nashri does is something a little bit common, something unique. Here, even secular humanism is so touching and so, how do you, like this is like a profound talk, and thank you for it, about Amba Brown, Mother Teresa, Father Greg Boyle. Now, how do we, especially as youth, tell the difference between this humanism that's really surrounding everywhere? I don't really feel, if I look superficially, I don't feel the church is any unique in that regard. Actually, I would say the churches are less. So how do you tell this from this?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. The first thing I'll say, there's two pieces. The first thing I'll say is that secular humanism operates on sort of a moral basis, that there's a dignity to the human being and stuff like that. But where it will break down is two places. The first place it'll break down is when it's pushed and provoked. So what do I mean by that? If my service is I want to help people, well, when those people become ugly to me and turn on me and don't give me that respect, then I may decide not to do it anymore because I'm not willing to take that on. Even in a relationship with a friend, I can help them, and then when they turn me, okay, well, you know what, now we're done. Because the Christian basis is one of that one-directional love, where I love and I don't expect to get in return. But a lot of secular humanism has a basis of that. So when it gets ugly for me, I may run and not hang in there. And then the second thing I'll say is that the humanism, the love that like Emma Brahm gave, for example, and many of these saints, it isn't just helping a poor person, right? So like when I think of, Africa, right? There are a lot of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, charity organizations or whatever, secular. They go in and their job is to put a well in Africa, in the city, and they can then water their crops. So they are going in as a humanistic effort to go and eradicate poverty, okay? As a Christian, that's not my objective. I'm not there to fix poverty or to get rid of poverty, because it's not going to happen. I mean, Jesus said, the poor you'll always have with you, right? So I'm not here to eliminate poverty. I'm here to look to the soul and to the person, each single person. So I'm not there just to give them money or sandwiches or food or shelter, but rather give them dignity and bring them to the love of God so that they see God in me and they see God in themselves and give them hope in Him. So the Christian charity isn't about serving the needs of the body. It's about the whole human, including their spirit and their soul, and caring about that and loving them through that. And I think it takes that Christian perspective to see those things and to adapt to those things. And when you're pushed back against, you'll continue because you see a greater need. I see the soul of a person that Christ came and died for. I'm not going to give up. So I think that would be the difference.
Would you consider, I observed that the examples you gave as I was following. I noticed something that could add to that difference. I didn't know. All the examples that were predominant in the presentation, like Abu Sheikh and Anbar Brown, they were very ascetic and very worshippers. So like Anbar Brown prayed, despite of him being the poor, he prayed many hours. You were telling about reading the Bible from cover to cover. And he fasted a lot, was very self-disciplined. St. John of Kronstadt from Russia. Abu Nabshir Kamil was very ascetic to the point that the Ethiopian monk, he came to 3 priests and one of them, there were other like chubby like me. And Abu Nabshir was all with very skinny. And he said to them, "Enta tchin, بتاكل, وانت تخين بتاكل." The Ethiopian monk said, "You are good, Abu Nabshir." So I think one of the, things we have to remember about their way of doing things. They didn't use the charity and the love as a goal in itself to replace their ascetic and life of prayer. I think in the Orthodox way, particularly, I'm sure Mother Teresa was like that too. In the Orthodox way, the charity, the giving, comes in junction with the prayer and the worship, not without it. Don't you agree to?
Oh, of course. I mean,
No, of course, and I'll even add that for them, what they're offering, I mean, what we offer to each other is Christ. And the only way you're going to offer Christ is if you have Him. And so the Eucharist becomes indispensable. So for me, the Eucharist isn't just important, it's everything. Right? Because this is how, I come and I drink from the fountain of life, and then I give life to those around me. The story of the Samaritan woman is really the story of the Eucharist. So this woman who's a sinner comes to a well, a fountain, and she drinks, and then she becomes a fountain to everyone around her, right? So the only way these things happen is if you take Him, and then He comes out, and He becomes this fountain that continues. A fountain is something, it never stops. It just keeps going. It always produces water, right? And this is exactly what Jesus said. He said, "I'm going to give you living water," the kind that doesn't make you never get thirsty again. Right? So the only way we can really give Christ to each other, the way of Abraham and all of these people did, is by taking first, right, and focusing on that. Right? And what I want to encourage you is not to stop at that level. Like sometimes we're very focused on taking, and now we have to think about. I just felt is taking Him and then giving Him and being the light of the world and the salt of the earth and all of the things that Christ told us to do. Yes, Father.
I have a question about the girl who complained that the servant don't ask about herself, just asking to check mark on the name list. Sometimes there is, because I served in Egypt, and there was a visitation, iftikar, and one-on-one and stuff. Here, sometimes I feel it is limited, or maybe you put some barrier under the name of privacy. So how can we make this balance between asking about the life of our kids in the service without breaking these barriers or whatever limits, and in the same time get sure that they are okay and they are growing in their spiritual life?
That's a very good question. So you didn't hear him. He said, there's a privacy thing. So if you start saying, hey, what's going on in your life? Someone may say, Intamek, it's you don't even know me, and you're asking about my private life, especially if it's a male servant and a female, a girl or something. I go back to, I love Abunam Shoikem, so I go back to something he said when he said, when you talk to your Sunday school kids, don't talk to them about God. Talk to them about their shoes. And what he's really trying to say is, meet them where they're at. A kid, this little kid, if at that age he senses that you're just interested in him, hey, I like those shoes. Very simple. And you build that relationship slowly, then when the time comes, you can ask about the bigger things and they'll open up. So it's very true. You have to start slow. And if you go in too fast, you say, hey, tell me about your life. They say, hey, slow down. I'm not going to share that with you. So you have to have put in the work, and it's a lot of work, saraha. First, right, where every, Sundays you greet them and, hey, what's going on? How's that exam you took last week? The easy things. And are you in 8th grade now? What's going to go on? Which high school are you going to go to? Right? And you track them, and say, hey, you told me 3 weeks ago you had a paper. How did the paper go? How was that project you're working on, right? And you're tracking with them. And when you see them the next time, you say, oh, I remember you told me a story about your dad. So how did that happen? Right? And then they start to trust you. So I agree with you, that you have to be careful here. And here we ask God for discernment, frauds, right? Thinking about how do I do it? And sometimes it's prayer. Like in the middle of talking to someone, you're praying and you're saying, God, give me the opening. God, give me the thing to say. And sometimes you don't even know you said the right thing. God just put it on your lips, and then you see them just kind of open up, and you're like, oh, thank you. So I agree, though, it's a concern, so you don't want to force it. But you keep trying, and then you pray, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes in many people, there's a door, especially if they've been hurt, or they have trauma from their from parents or from friends, or or you look like her dad, and so I'm not talking to any bald Egyptian men. That's I'm done, right? So there could be lots of other reasons why they're not opening up, and that's okay. Sometimes different servants, different approaches. You wait 2 years, you try again, and we just keep trying. And I would say don't be discouraged. I always say we play the long game. Whoever loves the longest wins, right? So we just keep loving. They don't give us anything back. They don't let us in. I still ask, right? And they'll show you the text. They go, you never stopped texting me. I never responded to you for 4 years, but you never stopped. And next thing you know, they call you and say, hey, I'm ready to talk. So sometimes we want results. Abuna Metta Miskini says, a lot of servants want results quickly. Before Christ gets his result, I want my results. And so sometimes we have to be patient, and sometimes God doesn't let us see the results of our service for our own humility, or for our own protection. We never see what we did. That's okay. Again, service isn't to him or her, it's to God. So I'm going to give it to God with us. And then God, it's his job to open the hearts.
If I may, I just want to thank for the question now. I think the key to this, honestly, Archie, is people, especially youth, are very sensitive to genuinity.
To what?
Genuinity.
Oh, yeah.
They feel it.
Yeah.
It's really strange. They're very sensitive to the servant who really cares.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to fill in the chiclet. It's really like they feel you, they feel like it. And sometimes in service, especially with load, will become like the checklist people. And that really is not what Christ does. we should, like you said, I really like what you said about the saints. It's very true. When you meet with a saint, they really look you at the eye, and you feel like they care for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes you meet like with maybe a priest or a servant who is just really busy. You're one of them, one of me,
Yeah.
and that's a very bad fault in service.
Yeah. That's absolutely true.
And it's not just service, like when you say being genuine. I think a lot of that. Yeah, one of them
One of them is a rapper. I'm not sure which one. But it's, you know, like when you do that service, people, not just with them, they can see where it's coming from. If you are incredibly kind to one person, and then when you go out and you serve somebody, you throw that sandwich at them, like, people can sense that. Like you said, you can't fake it. You can't fake it. And we try really hard, and I think that's when people say, like, I'm not going to respond. And the only way to get past that is, right, I'm going to persist, right? I'm going to prove to you that it's all about you. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not about anything else.
I mean, I'll take it a step further. Sorry, I know you guys all want to sleep, but I'll take it a step further. I don't like it when Sunday school servants say things like, well, I have to come to church early because I want my kids to see me in church early. No, come to church early because you want to come to church early, because you're there to meet Christ, and they can feel that. If you're just doing it to fake it, you know, it's like the parents who say, oh, I bring my kids to church so they can, you know, if they can see me at church. Well, they can tell, right? So I would say, if you aren't there and you don't have that genuine spirit, work on yourself first. Focus on that, what's blocking me from Christ, and fix that relationship, and then naturally the genuineness comes out when that relationship is fixed. But if you're just going to try to fake it more and say, okay, I'll work harder, and no, go backwards. Say, I'm going to dig deeper in my own life with God, right? Fill my own tank first, and then from, the crumbs that fall off the table, right? My cup overfloweth, and what overflows is what the kids get. Yes? Sure.
Can you clarify a little bit of the point of humanity versus service from a Christian way? Because the way it sounds like, the difference would be, if you care about their soul, that means just serve the Christians, serve the believers, versus the humanity comes across as you serve because these are human beings that are served.
No, I wouldn't. I didn't mean it that way. Sorry, I meant if I'm serving their souls, I'm not just serving Christians. I'm serving everyone, right? Because everyone's soul may be ailing, and they could be atheists. They could be another religion. They could be whatever, and I may still serve them spiritually, and not necessarily use the words in the beginning. I mean, sometimes you can get into a discussion with someone and you see what's going on and you're trying to serve them, but they're like, oh, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in any of that stuff, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, no problem, right? But we can talk about, well, does that give you satisfaction? Is that happiness really joy? Is it really deep? And so you're still serving them as a person, but maybe not right off the bat until they kind of ask you, and maybe that it's about Christianity and Christ and that sort of thing. So I didn't mean if I serve the soul, I only serve Christians. I think we should serve everybody. And the story about Abuna Shoy Kemal is perfect, right? He served the guy in the way he brought him fruit, and he visited him in his language. He never, Abuna Shoy Kemal never said Jesus. He never talked about, Taban, he's wearing, but he never preached. He served them in his language, right? But yet he served what he needed, because this man was angry because he hadn't been shown love, And so I think he diagnosed it and then showed him the love and respect that this man deserved. I think, did that answer your question? Something going on, guys. I don't know exactly what it is. Okay. Yalla Nem? All right. Thank you very much. Glory be to God forever and amen.
Thank you, Archie, very much for this deep thought that I personally will keep in mind for a long time. We will pray and then have to have some time for fellowship or if there's any spring rolls left. Can we stand up? Amen, 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 your death, O Lord, we proclaim your holy resurrection and ascension into the heavens. We confess, we praise you, we bless you, we thank you, O Lord, and we entreat you, our God. Make us worthy to pray thankfully, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In Christ Jesus our Lord, then the kingdom, power, and glory forever. Amen. Now the love of God the Father, the grace of the only begotten Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, the gift and the communion of the Holy Spirit, with you all in the peace, and the peace of the Lord be with you.
So here's an interesting point. How many people do you think?
By the way, this is the doctor down the street you were talking about.
Oh,
It's the doctor down the street, literally.
what's that?
You're the doctor down the street.
Oh, that's right. That's right. If anybody needs anything, have them come to me, even though I can't help them. There's been many smarter doctors on my street. I appreciate them. How many people do you think